Welcome to Logically Emotional, the place to come for the answers to the questions you didn't know you had. Thanks to our sponsors, Happy Hemp Pharmacy, The Massage, and Riverfront Medicine DPC. Logically Emotional starts now.
Welcome to Logically Emotional. So glad to have you guys back. Woo! So this is a place where you can come and get answers to questions you might not even know that you had. Or, stuff that you were curious about, but you didn't know where to go to get the right answer. Because
don't start. That's
you
a
know that
line to use in this situation.
Wikipedia isn't 100% true all the time?
That's bullshit.
What?
That's bullshit.
I just found out the other day.
Everything on the internet's true. What the hell's wrong with you?
I know, that's what I thought too, but then somebody said that everything on Wikipedia is not 100% correct, so don't use it for your essay papers.
Too late for that.
They do check it pretty often, but you can go in and edit.
For God's sakes.
Anybody can edit Wikipedia pages, and they just go through and
That's my point.
Yeah.
Why do you come on and just ruin my life right in the beginning? The first 30 seconds of the show, everything's a farce.
Because I am your ray of goddamn sunshine.
Right.
That's...
Super excited. Follow-up episode today. We are very excited to have AJ back in and Hayden joining him this week. So last episode, Hayden was here in the crowd, and we got to talking after the show, and it was like, well, this is a natural fit. Like, first of all, we need you guys back for a follow-up episode.
Yeah, I mean,
because all of your damn pronouns took the entire hour for us to get through.
That's not
just
my
a slow
fault.
learner.
Now that we're
Not my fault. I mean, I'm still trying to quiz myself, but
But now that we're past that, we're actually going to get into a little deeper conversation, and a lot of feedback from that episode, mostly positive feedback from that episode, which
Absolutely.
is really inspiring, because the whole idea of doing this is to break down the barriers that are there, and most of them are false barriers, if we're being honest.
so
it's
true.
Such
preconceived notions and...
Yeah, and it's so hard to get out of your comfort zone. How do I, and we had this conversation briefly, but how do I approach AJ in a way that will not be offensive? And that fear that's there, a lot of times it comes across the wrong way. So breaking down barriers, answering questions, and that's exactly what we're going to continue doing today.
Absolutely. So welcome back. So awesome that you guys were like, hell yeah, we'll help out. Love it. So last time we were kind of just breaking down what LGBTQIA plus.
Good job. You got them all.
Thank you. I've been practicing all morning.
I'm impressed.
It's kind of like a tongue
so am I.
twister. LGBTQIA plus.
Right.
See, I didn't mess it up. It was a tongue twister.
But yeah, so it was just breaking down, like, okay, what are the differences? And some of them meant the same thing with a little bit of a twist, and some of them, were like, oh, I had absolutely no idea. And then we talked about verbiage that really is no longer acceptable, and verbiage that has been taken back that is now acceptable. So it was pretty cool. I went home that night and I was on the phone with my boyfriend. I'm like, and did you know this? And did you know this? And guess what? This is what this is. And he's just like, so did you have a good podcast?
I'm still trying to process every damn word that we went through. But it was enlightening. It was actually really, really cool. And what I enjoyed the most was the conversation that we had afterwards. Because there was a lot of things that we didn't cover on air that, we should have covered. So, let's go ahead and get into this. So we've talked about starting this year, you're going to be you're going to be doing the hormone. What's the correct term for that?
It's HRT, so hormone replacement therapy.
Yeah, thank you.
So for I'll be starting testosterone, and then for people that are trans women or more female identifying, it's estrogen. So people just call it HRT.
Okay.
Short, yeah.
So hormone replacement therapy, you're going to be starting that this year, and you're also going to be having top surgery done as well.
At some point. Yes.
At some point. So this is where things got really interesting
Yes.
in the conversation, because Hayden has already gone through both and your story was pretty incredible. So you've already gone through the hormone replacement therapy, and you've already had the top surgery. So going from where you were to where you are now had to have been an incredible journey, and I'm sure as many highs as there were just as many lows. Tell us about your story.
Well, so I've started hormones in March of 2018, so not terribly long ago, but before then it took me so long to realize, exactly what the feelings that I felt were. Like AJ said in the last podcast, he had these feelings of being uncomfortable growing up in the body that he was in. And for the longest time, so I grew up in a kind of a mixed household. My mother's, she's a white Southern Baptist, true Southern woman, and my father's Muslim from the Middle East. So growing up in a biracial household, growing up in a, dual religious household made it really difficult to explore not only my sexuality but my gender identity as well. My parents wanted me to be this, pristine female who was a pure typical lady who's going to find, the next Prince Charming and live life according to that specific, idea, which was okay at the time, but I was the type of kid, I was like always outside. I didn't do typical like things like my sister would do. I just knew and felt like I fit in more with the gender that I present as now. I fit in better as a male.
Can I ask you something real quick? So when I was growing up, I was always referred to as a tomboy. I was out there playing football with the boys and dealing with worms and bugs and whatever else, and all the other girls were in the house playing Barbie. And did that ever come up of like, oh well, she's just a tomboy?
Absolutely. And for the longest time, that's what I thought I was, because I was like, okay, I didn't even know what being transgender was. And for me, growing up in that kind of household, it was like, okay, you can't be gay, you can't be trans, like, if that's just not right. That is so inherently wrong that I just kind of pushed it in the back of my mind and created these scenarios that, okay, I'm just a tomboy, that's what it is. And that's how I grew up, just kind of pushing that in the back of my mind, in the back of my feelings, mentally creating barriers that would prevent me from actually fulfilling what I did, years later. It was very difficult for me to come to terms with that because, I when I was in college, I played women's rugby. I was a very strong supporter of women's rights because I thought that I was just this really strong, independent woman, and that's the persona that I had grown up and adapted to fit myself, and that became the core of who I was back then. But something still didn't fit right. And during that time, I was also exploring my sexuality too. For the longest time being a woman, I was like, I've been with, straight men. I was like, okay, well, I know I'm attracted to men now. And then, thought I was gay at some point, or, I dated a girl for about 3 years. And then that's the point where I was like, okay, I need to start something about, like, do some more research into what being transgender is, because something about that didn't feel right. Like, and I don't know why at one point, like, it clicked with me. I was just like, people started calling me like a lesbian, like a butch lesbian, kind of like, AJ knows what I'm talking about. And that just, it didn't feel right. It was like,
so you go from tomboy to butch lesbian, like, pretty quickly, especially in high school. It's like, you go from, like, middle school, you're like, this is tomboy.
Okay, wait a minute. I saw your before picture. I never ever would have said butch lesbian.
Right.
No.
Sorry, but
Can we show that picture?
Yeah.
Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Yeah, because I think that would be incredible to put on and see the before and after.
I think that their mic needs to be moved
you
up a little
slide
bit.
it up a little bit? Yeah, there you go. A little closer.
There you go.
Perfect.
But not so much butch lesbian for him. But I mean, like, there definitely was like this, like, I don't know, like, is stud the right word or dyke the right word? Like, kind of stigma. I mean, for me at least in high school, it went from being tomboy in middle school, where I was just kind of like this, like, more masculine female, to being just like considered a lesbian and being told I was a lesbian or a butch lesbian or something because I was more masculine, more tomboyish. But I mean, I don't know if that's the same for you, but that's how it was for me. At least.
Is dyke a bad word?
Again, it's all about context. Like,
Okay.
I mean, if you, like, walk up and, like, look at somebody and be like, oh, you're a dyke, that's probably,
Right.
pretty bad. But, like, some people like the word dyke. Some people like being considered a dyke, things like that. I think
Okay.
it's one of those, like, reclaiming things. It's how you claim it and
Right.
who's using the word, really.
And how it's being used.
how it's being used,
I
yeah.
gotcha.
I don't know if you experienced that. That's at least what I experienced, like
Definitely something
coming into
similar.
it. Yeah.
You know, I think everybody has preconceived notions of who people are based on when they first look at them, right? Like, you look at someone and you're like, oh, that's definitely a gay man, or oh man, she's definitely a lesbian, or, you know, we all like to categorize people into these own boxes because it makes it easier for us to generalize, to just keep our own sanity, because it's so much easier to generalize who people are and put people into a box to categorize them. That way, you know, when you get information for later, you're like, oh, okay, well, I know that this is what I associate to be gay, this is what I associate to be lesbian, this is, you know, what I associate to be a man, this is what being a woman means.
Well, I think sometimes, too, though, it makes it easier to talk to somebody on their level. Like, you know, I have a gay male friend, and I have absolutely no problem being like, girl, you are gorgeous. And he loves that. And if I had said that to Sting, which I do anyway, girl, you gorgeous, he'd be like, well,
You can't lie to him like that.
Thanks, Hayden.
it's going to be one of those nights.
Let's throw it on. This is incredible. The before and after is absolutely incredible. So you're in the front.
Yep.
I totally would have done you as a girl. Just throwing that out there.
You're not my type.
That's fine. Perfectly fine.
A little backhanded comment there.
You know, I still have that same bikini, actually.
But hold on, Sting. While on that note,
I'm guessing it doesn't fit the same. Something tells me that it doesn't necessarily.
I lost a couple inches up here.
Gotcha.
just a couple.
So, and it's fascinating to me. Like, it's just, again, it doesn't come from ignorance per se, but it's fascinating, the story. So you said you grew up in a very Southern Baptist home, at least on your mom's side. So you decide you're going to tell her.
Well, actually, I did not decide I was going to tell her. So I guess my official coming out story to my parents was more like, so my insurance was still billed to the house that I lived in Houston, and she found the insurance paperwork, and I got a phone call while I was at the grocery store. And that's how my mom found out.
Oh, my.
And I was standing in the middle of the grocery store like, oh, I'm not ready to have this conversation right now.
Clean up on aisle 3. All right, so perfect. What did she say? How did she take it? I mean, angry, misinformed, still loving? What did that look like?
A little bit of all of the above. She was definitely angry and misinformed. We didn't talk for a while after that. She was confused as to what everything meant, and I still didn't have all the answers. When I first started transitioning, I was just kind of, for me, the way I started, and it was just me doing research on what being transgender was, because, you know, for a time, I hate admitting it, but it's a part of my story. I was a little like transphobic towards myself, and because I couldn't handle the truth about myself because of how I was raised, because it was ingrained in my mind that it was just so wrong, and I was like, this can't be me, please don't let it be me. And I pushed it away for so long because I was like, it just can't be. I can't do this. I can't go through this process. I can't, you know, be this way because it's just so wrong. And that's what was ingrained in the back of my head during the process. But once I started, I was like, went on this journey of self-discovery that made me understand more of who I was, you know, back then, and give me a greater appreciation of who I was as presenting female. And that's why, you know, today when I come, I don't consider myself fully man or fully woman, because I have such a great appreciation for both Hayden and Hene, which is what my birth name was.
Right. Now, did you have a mentor or a good support group while you were deciding this, or when you were afraid of yourself and what you could possibly be, and then through the surgery? Did you have people there that were supportive?
So in the beginning, I didn't. I kind of just went through everything on my own and tried to figure it out by myself, because a lot of people just didn't know, and I was still scared to like show that. And people were just, oh, you know, butch lesbian, you're wearing,
right,
you know, probably wearing clothes similar to what I'm wearing now, and people would just be like, oh, you're a butch lesbian, or they would try and categorize me. And having to explain over and over and over again, like, no, I'm actually a trans guy, was it was a hard process, and a lot of my friends didn't understand what being transgender was either. My parents certainly didn't. Like, I still barely talk to my father today, and he doesn't even acknowledge it, so
He still calls you by your given name?
he does, and it's been a process,
Okay.
But again, he was raised in a very conservative Muslim environment, so I don't expect him to have that kind of open understanding. So I like to give him the benefit of the doubt. Right. So I didn't really have that support system, but I know, like, it would have been really nice change for me to have people by my side going through that process, because it was really difficult for me, And I know AJ has a different story on that as well. You have such a great group of people around you, including myself. Right?
We're friends.
Wow.
I'm just kidding.
AJ
actually
AJ said
over
you
there.
guys just met out in the parking lot, so
Not what I said. Not what I
on
said.
the way in.
I said I was on the phone waiting. I'm looking
So-
at Natasha because she's like, "Excuse me,
So you
where you at?"
started HRT in early 2018.
Right.
How long of a process is it before you start seeing the results that
So
you're looking to find? I mean, I'm assuming every body is different, but for you personally, how long of a journey was that before you really started to make that transition?
So, honestly, I couldn't give you exact details, but, I took photos at the beginning. I mean, you saw the before photos. That's what I looked like before starting.
I can't even look at him with a straight face now. You saw the before photos, the one that she would fuck, right?
Why is your face getting all red? Over
I don't know.
there?
It's warm in here. It's strange. Anyway.
It's all right. You have the picture. You can save it for later.
No, Ethan's got the picture. I'm sure he's already saved it down somewhere. Anyway, go ahead.
All right. Well, for me to actually start seeing changes, it took months, if not like a year down the road, and it was just very slight, gradual changes over time from body fat redistribution, which, honestly, you don't realize until one day you're in the mirror and you look at your before photos and like, oh my god, that's how much I've changed. Even the facial hair, it's like they're so gradual, you don't realize until there's one moment in time where you actually take a second to look in the mirror and then pull up an old photo of you and be like, oh my god, like, wow, that was me, and now this is me. And it's just, that process of actually seeing those changes, even though they may be gradual, is really it's a great experience, to be able to see, okay, there's actually results that are going on here. I can see these changes. And like, even now I've experienced changes within the last, few months, from facial hair to my voice dropping. Oh, and it was really awkward in the first year because my voice would crack all the time. And before I started work, so about a year ago, or over a year and a half ago, I actually started working at Amazon as a manager in operations. So I got my name changed and everything done in Texas right before I started, so that nobody would have any idea, that I was once a woman. So I try to make sure that I was what we call passable, to a sense, before I started working, so that I wouldn't have to deal with some of the conservative viewpoints in Tennessee, especially working in an environment where you work with a lot of conservative people.
Right. So, if you don't mind, why did you opt for top surgery? Like, couldn't you just tape them down?
So,
Or, I mean, it just, I don't know.
Did you see that picture?
I know.
I mean, how do you take those down?
Yeah.
It's painful.
Right, I can imagine.
Yeah,
Actually,
I mean-
I can't. But like sports bras kill me. So AJ, I don't know what you're.
yeah,
it's
so
okay.
AJ,
But
you're
is-
wearing a binder right now,
Yeah,
right?
I'm
Right.
wearing a full torso binder.
Right, but is that an option? A route that some people choose to go instead of surgery?
Exactly. So any type of surgery is very not detrimental, but it can have lasting impacts on the body, and it's a very long and tedious process. The recovery is extensive. Like, I'm still recovering from mine. I got my top surgery in January this year, actually.
Okay.
So even a year down the road, you're still, like, I'm still not able to lift my arms up all the way. Like, if you asked me to change a light bulb right now and reach straight up, I probably couldn't do that.
Is that because of the muscles or just like...
So what they basically do, it's kind of like mastectomy, but they leave a little bit of breast tissue because, you know, a male chest has natural breast tissue in it. And since, I mean, I was a size D, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they weren't tiny little A cups or B cups. You
They
know?
were pretty
I'm an
ample.
AJ, damn it.
But I just
Do
looked
not
over
make eye contact with me when I'm in the middle of this glorious story.
I just looked over and he was just like,
I know. I mean, I enjoy
Size
playing with them
C.
all the time.
I mean, I'm
like,
a
I do
size
miss
C.
that. You
Ethan,
know?
put that picture back up for Christ's sake. Help me out here. Good God.
I loved how I looked at a bikini. You know, it was great.
if
And
nothing,
getting those free drinks. I mean, come on.
if nothing else comes from this podcast, I think it just is Sting questioning his sexuality just a little bit.
How am I questioning?
enough.
How am I questioning my
Just
sexuality?
We all know you already downloaded Grindr.
Yeah,
It's okay.
so
what the-
if you don't know what AJ's talking about, you're going to have to watch the first episode.
Don't watch the first episode.
Please watch the first episode.
Watch it.
Please.
It's well worth your time.
Please.
Yeah, so there are people, like, surgery doesn't have to be
Right? For me,
the answer for everybody.
exactly. Like, for some people, like, especially those that have smaller chests, they're perfectly comfortable binding. Now, AJ can attest to this, and I can attest to it too. Like, binding is it hurts.
It's dangerous.
It's dangerous because it basically, you know, flattens you out
You're
as
like
close
cutting
to
off a lot of
possible.
circulation, aren't you?
So you're cutting off circulation, and then especially if you're taping. So like binders are a little bit new to the situation. Binders are a safer way. You can buy binders online, and it's basically a thick piece of fabric that allows for the compression to be safer. But it used to be like compression tape, you know, like ace bandages
Yeah.
people would wrap around the chest, and that essentially would pull the chest down and stretch out
Yes,
the boobs.
please do not use ace bandages.
Don't. No, and then it can concave your ribs in, make it so you can't breathe. If you exercise in it, like it can be very dangerous and life-threatening to use like ace bandages. It can even be that way with binders if you don't get the right size, if you don't get them fitted correctly, because you're essentially just pulling your chest down and pushing your ribs in to make it look like you have more pecs than you have tits.
Exactly, and for those of you that are currently binding and possibly considering surgery, if you bind for extensive periods of time and wear your binder all the time, get a poorly fitting binder, you use ace bandages to tape, that can harm your chances of actually getting surgery because of the way that it can harm your chest.
So there's a vetting process for the top surgery. That's what I'm hearing, right?
Yes, so
Yeah. Well, I mean, because if you tape too tightly, if you bind too tightly, and you shut your boobs down, you're just stretching that skin, which makes it extremely hard to like fix. People that do it for years end up just having boobs that just look very, very bad because they're just being stretched constantly, and then that can make it so you also have a higher risk of breast cancer. You can't get your nipple placements right. You can't get all of it correct, and it can just come out not looking good. And when people do that, they tend not to be as happy with their top surgery as somebody who has taken better care of their chest.
Gotcha.
But sometimes it's all they can do.
I'm going to ask you the nipple question. So, and here's why. We were out in Nashville going to some bar for dinner, and I walk by and I see this sign that says 3D nipple tattooing. And I take a step back to look. That's exactly. I'm like, what is going on here? And then I Googled it because there was nothing on any of the signs to indicate what they were talking about. And it was for, the mastectomies, and it was making tattooing nipples on that looked real.
Right, so that's definitely an option for people that go through the process. And it really depends on what your consultation and your meeting with the surgeon looks like, because before you go into the surgery you have to get a consultation first. You send pictures, or you can go in person and they kind of look over your chest area to see what you want your chest to look like, the procedure itself, how safe it's going to be for you, basically going through your options, and of course pricing arrangements and things like that, because you can pay for it up front, you can go through insurance, you can take out a loan. There's many different options.
Okay.
So after you go that, you kind of set a date after you get all that information for your top surgery, and you'll go in and they'll, basically perform the surgery on you and give you the recovery, everything you need. Mm-hmm. So part of that process is what you want your nipple placement to look like and what kind of nipples you want. Like me personally, I got mine. They're grafts. It's basically my own nipples that they just reshape, size, and put on over here. And it's not an exact science. It's a little bit of art and science. Okay. To get the placement right, but they do explain some of the risks about that. So, for example, like sometimes the grafts won't 100% take, so you could end up losing a nipple. You could end up losing sensation. Like I really don't have any sensation right here at all.
Okay.
Let's see. So for those that do end up not being able to retain their nipples, that's getting tattoos is an option for them to make it look like you have nipples. Mm-hmm. Right, and along with that, if it does take, there's still some complications that could happen. You might not get all your coloring back, and the placement might not be exactly the way that you want it. The sizing might be different. It might not be 100% what you want, but over time, you do learn to love your body because you realize that the body is yours. It's a part of who you are, and you learn to love it just like you learn to love yourself.
Yeah. And some people don't get the nipples put back on. Exactly. Some trans and non-binary people just get them completely off. Oh. And just, sorry, that's the second time I've hit that today. Some people just get them completely off and just have a bare chest, and then that's why it's also really important to make sure you do your research on whatever doctor you're getting to do your surgery, because some doctors that do top surgeries I've seen some bad top surgeries, some messed up.
Definitely review the photos.
Yeah, so how would you vet your doctor?
Just by what they've done, if they have experience with trans people, experience with top surgeries,
and of course through your community as well, people that have gone through the process too. Like for me, I got mine done in Charleston.
Yeah, a lot of people don't get them in the states that they live in. They go and they drive, and it's very expensive. I mean, I don't know how much you spent for yours, but it can be anywhere between $12,000 and $15,000 by the end of it.
Oh,
so
okay.
Wow.
I spent a total of about $9,000 on mine, and I paid for it all out of pocket.
Wow.
Good for you.
So, back to your journey. So you're leaving Texas, you're coming to Tennessee, you're taking the job at Amazon, you've transitioned everything, and this is going to be a far cry as far as the comparison goes, but try to follow me on this. A woman gets married, and I've got to change my driver's license, and I've got to go to the Social Security office, and all this crap that you don't really think about, because it's my special day, and fucking ever, whatever. You, on the other hand, you're having to change everything. Do you go back and do you change birth certificate? Do you change, does the birth certificate have to be changed in order to legally change the gender on your driver's license? How does this work to go from being a female to becoming an actual recognized male within, I hate to say society, but society, for lack of a better term?
So it's actually interesting. I do not have my birth certificate changed to reflect my my new name. Reason being is because on the waiver that you have to get your birth certificate changed, you have to have your parents' signatures on it in order to get it changed, which is the only reason. But I was able to get my driver's license and my Social Security changed. Now the process, like I said, I went through the process in Texas. I had the pleasure of living in Austin, so I had access to quite a bit of resources, and I did my research on how to go about that process. So what I did is, I went online to look at some of the legal paperwork you needed, and after figuring out, researching different forums, getting the right legal paperwork, because there's a couple different ways you could go about it. I chose to get my name and gender marker changed, and there's a form to get both of those things done at the same time. There's also forms to get them done separately depending on where you're at, but I chose mine to get mine done all at once because I was working on a very slim time frame before moving to Tennessee. So after I got the right paperwork, I also had to get my fingerprints done because they require that, and they of course require your other forms of identity. I went to, so there's a law library in Austin, and they offer services from, I believe it's 12 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, where you can actually go and talk to a lawyer. They cannot represent you, but you can talk to them about certain advice, like if you have the right paperwork, what all you need to go through this process. So I went to the library during those hours to speak with, a lawyer to see, hey, is there anything I need? Because I didn't want to pay for a lawyer to go through that process because that was very expensive, to pay for a lawyer, even though they can get it done very quickly. So I went to the lawyers and, I asked them, because after you get the paperwork done, if you have the correct information, and everything filled out correctly, I would also be careful because sometimes you need to get that paperwork signed by a witness as well. So just go over whatever state you live in, make sure you to the T, follow exactly what the paperwork says, and it doesn't hurt to get it checked out if you have access to those resources, to definitely have someone look over it, make sure you have the right paperwork so you're not going back and forth. So after I made sure I had the right information in the paperwork, I asked them, hey, what judges are on the docket that are friendly? Because I'd heard stories about judges that would reject you because they did not agree with, with whether it was being gay, transgender. They did not support the LGBTQIA plus community at all. So you have to be very careful who you go see to actually get your paperwork signed.
That's very smart.
So I asked what the friendliest judges were, so I could get my name on that docket and go see them. So I got really lucky because it turns out that right after I got finished meeting with the lawyers, literally the court was right across the street, so I could just walk straight over. And it turned out that judge had an open slot right before lunch that I could go in and see him, and they said we'll get you in. So I went up to the courtroom. Of course, I went up there, I had a pocket knife in my pocket, and almost almost missed my chance, but I sure did run back to my car, put it up, and said, I promise I won't hurt anyone. It's just an 1.5 inch long knife. It won't do that much damage. But I went up there, and they, signed in, waited my turn to go see the judge, and he actually brought me into his chambers and literally just signed the paper. That's why it's very important you make sure that you find a friendly judge that will make the process a lot easier for you. So definitely check who's on the docket if you do go get your name changed, and do your research as well. Now, the thing about Tennessee, though, is that they're the only state at this point that does not let you change your birth certificate. So if you're born in Tennessee, unfortunately this time, it's going to be difficult for you to actually get a birth certificate changed. But in order to change your license and everything else, you don't really need a birth certificate. You just need your social security number and driver's license to do anything, apply for a job, apartment, anything like that. Social security was easy. Well, I won't say it was easy, but once you get the paperwork from the judge, definitely get some copies. Don't just get one sheet, because sometimes they'll keep it, but you have to bring that paperwork with you, your forms of ID, and then go to the Social Security office and get that done. Fill out the paperwork, go through the process, and they'll help you out too, again, depending on if they're nice enough to or not. I had to go back a couple times. And then for the driver's license, it works similarly like the Social Security. You just make sure you have all the information that you need, especially the court documents, and make sure that they are stamped. I think that's the most important thing, and I usually try and keep, a copy with me at all times, just in case something comes up, and, things that are in my past name need to be changed, or, because really, you try and hit all the biggest things, but you also have to remember you have to go back and change your cards, your, bank accounts. There's so many things you have to change, the insurance, and it goes down the line.
Oh, yeah.
So, two quick ones. Quick follow-up for you, and then I think AJ can probably speak to this one really well, because we kind of hit on it last week. So, first of all, in the eyes of the government, you are now a male, correct? I mean, as far as census and things of that nature, how does that work as far as demographically?
That is correct. I am technically a male. I mean, I'm now in the selective service. They sent me that nice letter.
Oh, nice.
Right.
Welcome to the club.
I know. I was so excited, but
I'll never get drafted. They're like, you're just a disaster. Fuck off. But yeah.
But there's certain situations where I'm not seen as a male quite yet. Like, for example, I was training to become a Marine and go into the Marines, so I was training to go into the military, right? Well, when Trump took office and passed that legislation kind of barring certain transgendered people from entering the military, I was affected by that. So in that sense, not really seen as a male. I would have to go, be a part of, go through training. Well, I couldn't because I've already had surgery, but be with the woman, like be with your birth gender. So in certain cases, I'm still not 100% seen as a male.
Gotcha. And AJ, so we obviously you were talking about Austin being in Texas. Austin, a very liberal part of Texas, a lot more accepting, probably the better way to put it. And then now and we've referred to Tennessee a lot because we're in Chattanooga shooting the podcast. So no matter where you're watching this, that's kind of our basis point for everything. But obviously, way more conservative here, a lot less understanding here of situations like this when it comes to culture. But it's a state by state basis, and obviously Tennessee is way far behind. But what? Is Tennessee really the worst example right now as far as getting that taken care of?
Oh, that's
Pretty
an
much.
adamant.
Yeah, Tennessee is I want to say by far. I mean, there are
Wait,
other
is it worse
states.
than Alabama?
Perfect.
I mean, I hate to say it. Sorry, Tennessee, but we just got to catch up with the times.
Mm-hmm.
We are behind, and it is. I mean, there are no protections for us here. None. There are no transgender protections here almost. And so yeah, I mean, it really is a state by state. I mean, every state's gonna be different. California's gonna be really easy. Washington's gonna be really easy. New York's pretty easy. I'm from Ohio originally, so that Ohio's not gonna be that bad. I can get my birth certificate changed in Ohio, and I mean, I have a Tennessee license now, but as far as my birth certificate goes, but Tennessee is pretty far behind. Yeah.
Interesting. So we talked about this after the last podcast, and if you're okay with it, we'll continue the conversation of...
Oh, can I exit at this part? There's going to be so many jokes within this next topic.
You
You're
better
gonna have
stay
to keep your
seated.
jokes not...
I'm not making the jokes. I'm
Don't
just waiting on
you move.
AJ to just start rapid fire this way.
Why is it me? You set yourself up for all of this. Like, I didn't just
I'm
come
not
up with
making
this.
the jokes.
I didn't come
I'm
up with this
actually
shit. He set
super
himself up.
intrigued. Anyway,
Okay,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'll step back. No more jokes.
Whatever, AJ.
No more jokes.
You don't even know what the topic is yet.
I am so sorry. I can only imagine it's going to have something to do with sex. If you're getting that red face
I'm
already.
not ready.
Look at it. I mean, you guys see his face? Like, it's
My
like
face is always
green,
red.
blue, white, and then just a big red dot in the middle.
I feel like I could chroma that red out.
You better not.
It's really red.
You better leave it. You better leave that red.
That's what the people want to see.
It's hot in here.
Be authentic.
Go ahead.
Be real. So we talked about... we talked about the top surgery.
Right.
Do you mind talking about bottom surgery?
Not at all.
Okay, because you haven't gone there.
No, I have not gone there. The process, and I know AJ's done his research on this as well, so I just had a little bit of reservations, A, because it's so expensive, and B, there hasn't been enough advancements to warrant the kind of stress that comes along with bottom surgery, because, like, A, the recovery period is ridiculously long. B, they basically take portions of your skin to use to mold the penis, whether it's from your leg or your forearm, and even then it's not a guarantee that it's going to be fully functioning. Like, I know we touched on that after the podcast last time, if you want to go.
So what are we talking about ballpark wise as far as cost goes? You said super expensive, so we're looking
It's like
It can be 100
9 to
up to
15
100
grand for top surgery.
$100,000 or more.
or more.
Because for trans men to get bottom surgery, it's not just one stage. You have to go through
At
multiple
least 3.
stages. It starts with a hysterectomy where you get everything removed,
Yeah.
and then it goes into like stage 1 fallow, and then stage 2 fallow. I can never pronounce it. Phalloscopy. They just
Close
call
enough.
it fallow. They
Yeah,
just call it
fallow. We just call it
So like this-
phalloplasty.
Yeah, so
Right.
phalloplasty, yeah. So there's like stage 1, stage 2, is multiple stages and multiple skin grafts.
Yeah, I was
And
going to say
it-
grafting your skin. I mean, that's not easy to recover from to begin with.
They literally take the
Yeah.
entire skin off of your arm once, they'll do it off of your leg
Oh,
once.
and then laser
Maybe
hair
a-
removal on top of that. You have
Yeah.
to pay for laser hair removal because you obviously don't want any hair
Yeah.
on your penis.
So it's extremely painful. It's an extremely long process. A lot of healing time. It takes several years to get it completely done. And by the end of it, with the research that we have now, and let me just say, like for some trans men, it is they have to have that, and it's extremely important to them, and it's completely worth it for them. I will never have bottom surgery. It's not worth it enough for me. I'm okay with my bottom. I don't know about you if you ever consider it later. I'm okay with my bottom half. I don't need it to be happy, but some people absolutely do need it.
But there's no feeling, right? I mean, even if you have bottom surgery done, that doesn't guarantee the fact that you're going to have any kind of sensation.
Never guaranteed. It's never guaranteed with your top, and it's definitely not guaranteed with the bottom. They are working on that. That is something that they are progressing towards, but a lot of the feeling that comes with it is like a psychological feeling, like being able to see a penis in your hand, being able to use it, touch it. That is enough sensation for some people's mind to be like, this is enough to, give me pleasure. But as far as like nerve endings, they're not really there yet to where they can get the nerves to interact.
And it's not going to function like a cis male penis.
And it doesn't, your blood's not going to rush down there, and you're not going to get hard naturally. Usually it's a pump or it's a rod that you can use to make it stand straight up. And you can use it. You can use it during sex. You can use it to pee from. They give you balls, all of it. But it's not, I don't know, for trans men at least, they have not come far enough in this surgery because it's really, it's a lot.
And there's really only a few surgeons in the country, if not the world, that are able to
successfully
do the surgery.
Yeah.
And the results vary from person to person every time.
And the surgery can also turn out badly too. It's there's no guarantees on it ever even working fully.
Right. And if you're considering it, definitely also do your research and understand the effects and everything. And if this is something you absolutely have to have, that's very important and vital that you do your research.
Yes. Now, for trans women, there has been a lot more progress. Trans women, for the most part, can, get a full functioning vagina and it be, I say full functioning, as much as you can.
Sure.
And it be a lot more pleasurable, a lot better. Not nearly as long of a surgery process either. I guess it's easier to take something away than like bring something forth, I guess. But I don't know as much about trans women's surgeries as I do about trans men's. I'm still doing a lot of research on that side.
Right. Because we talked about last time, you're looking into going to college for...
Well, just like queer education, sex education, things like that. I don't know what exactly my master's going to be in. Because I already have my bachelor's in sociology, but I want to get my master's to work with this kind of specific stuff.
Can we talk about, now that you mentioned sex education and kind of moving from, not necessarily moving from the LGBTQIA plus, but it is the lack of information. And honestly, if you look at society, I really don't think this is a far cry. The fact that really sex education does not exist anymore.
No.
Especially at a public school level.
Yep.
I think I took a half of a semester in high school, and it really did me well 4 kids later. It was phenomenal.
All they teach you how to put a condom on a banana, was that it?
I don't have any. I don't have any warts on my pecker, but otherwise, it really didn't do me any good. But do you not think? Shut up. Do you not think
getting tested is important? Get tested.
Do you not think that this would be something not only to obviously education is so important, especially in the day and age that we live in, where Tinder and all jokes aside, Grindr and these apps are there where you can hook up.
Right.
And it really, it's become it's almost like it's a cyclical thing. Like, it's almost like we're back in the late 60s and everybody's just exploring sexuality in one way, shape, or form. And so here we are.
Does that include you too?
Yeah, absolutely.
He hates us for that. We're not going to get invited back for
No, you're right. No, it doesn't bother me. But we're in a society now where sex and sexual exploration is so prominent because of the digital age.
Right.
But there is no education to back it up. So there's, and any time that you have exploration without education, it's
going to end in disaster.
It's a disaster. So not only for, the stigma of you being in the LGBTQ community and how this could shine a better light on it, to where people aren't so ignorant to the fact that these things are going on, but also just even if you are a cis man or a cis woman, this is shit that you need to fucking know. This is important stuff, and nobody is addressing that elephant in the room.
Yeah. I'll just say, when I was in high school, they didn't. Our sex ed was STDs, showing us STDs, and that was it.
All the slideshows and shit.
So and that was what they stressed. They didn't really stress, and then they was like, nothing's 100%. So just don't have sex. Just don't do it. Sex was a forbidden word. But I think where we are right now, it's kind of like it's good and bad. We're in like a good side and a bad side. We're not good as far as teaching the younger generation about it, but like people in their 20s and 30s and up pretty much have gotten this, like, especially the gay community, where it's like getting tested is now, you can get it for free, it's really readily available.
Yeah, but you have to think about why in the gay community it happened back in the 70s.
Yeah, so I mean, it's become readily available because of, especially what happened in the 70s, but also STDs are a lot more prominent now. 1 in 5 people have genital herpes, 1 in 5 people have chlamydia and gonorrhea, and they estimate around 200,000 people in the U.S. have HIV or AIDS and don't know it.
Wow.
So it's one of those things where it's like we are trying to push for all this testing, getting testing, making it readily available, making it free to everybody, and making it, not weird. It should never be weird to have that conversation with somebody you're sleeping with. Like, have you been tested? Like, that is the most mature thing you can do as an adult, is to have that conversation.
I think that's like the question that should come before what's
anything.
in your bank account.
Yeah, I don't care if it's a first date. If you're going to screw on the first date, ask that question.
I ask every single person I sleep with, have you been tested? Like, plain and simple. Like, it is. If you can't answer it, then it's not happening.
That's a lot better than a note beside the bed in the morning when you wake up.
I'm not risking my life. But we also in this time where it's so prominent, and it's becoming like if you Google any STD, it's gonna say very common, very common, very common. How many people. So it's something that we need to work towards it, and that's why I'm so passionate about sex education and talking about sex and making it not weird, because sex isn't weird. Everyone has sex. It's very prominent in every community, whether you're cis, trans, gay, bi, anywhere, everybody's doing it. So sex ed is crucial right now, I think, and it needs to start at the lower level.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think that's the hardest place to get it to start, because public schools don't want that, because then it
They don't
opens
want
up
to
the
address
doors.
the elephant in the room. Yeah.
It opens up the doors for kids to start having sex younger. I mean, but big newsflash, they're already doing it, but it opens up the doors.
Right.
But,
well, it's like saying that marijuana is a gateway drug.
Yeah.
Like, seriously?
Yeah.
Talk about sex education. And you know what? These kids that are lost and confused, maybe they now have that little tiny bit of something that's going to stop them from, when they're freshmen in high school, they're going to kill themselves because they have no idea who they are, what they are, where they're going, and they don't know where to turn.
Or how to deal with it, how to cope with it.
Right.
I mean,
who can I talk to? I'm feeling weird,
but
I don't know what it is.
I mean, I think that it is 100% mandatory. It should be 100% mandatory with any kind of sex education that you have, that you also address sexuality and gender with that. And that was never something that's been addressed in my high school,
not mine,
anywhere. And I think it has to be 100% mandatory, because if you're going to talk about sex, you have to talk about all types of sex and let people know what it is, and that's going to drop the suicide rates. Yeah,
you have to let them know that it's okay to have sex no matter what your sexuality or gender is. It's okay for anyone to have sex.
And just that simple conversation at a young age, starting that conversation when they're in middle school, when they're in early high school, will drop those suicide rates, will drop the depression and anxiety rates by huge numbers.
Absolutely.
Just opening the door to those conversations, drops. I mean, so I told you I went to a liberal Christian school. I can't tell you how many girls on my dorm, my freshman and sophomore year, I gave the sex talk to, girls that were in their late 20s, in their late 30s, who had no idea, who had never had a boyfriend, didn't know how to kiss, didn't know anything about sex.
Do you think that anal still means you're a virgin?
Yeah, but they didn't even know how to get ready for something like that,
What? Hayden.
And here's and honestly, here's this
But-
too. Like, it starts at home. For fuck's sake, if you're not a mature enough adult to sit down with your child and have a conversation that's going to be really fucking uncomfortable, you probably shouldn't be a parent because you probably suck at it to begin with. It's not a fun conversation to have,
no.
and you can't rely on the schools to have these conversations.
So how does that conversation look for you and your kids?
I mean, it's not going to be a fun conversation, but you know what? I've honestly thought about this. I've got 4 kids. I've got 3 beautiful daughters, and I can't tell them not to have sex.
You can't.
I can't.
They're gonna do it.
Because number one, they're going to do it, and I can't tell them not to do something that I did at that age. I mean, don't get me wrong. My oldest daughter's 11. All right, I got a little more time to prep for this mentally, but
You think you do, but it starts at.
you're right. You're right.
It starts when puberty hits.
It's younger and younger and younger, and you know, it is an uncomfortable conversation. It's not going to be fun to have. But for fuck's sake, it is a responsibility because you went out and you fucked, and I'm hoping you had a great time. Otherwise, you got a kid and you enjoy it, Jim. But sit them down and just fucking be an adult. Be an adult because I guarantee you that 15, 20, 30, 45-minute conversation can save them from a lifetime of regret,
Absolutely.
heartache, financial burden. There's so much that goes in with it. Be a fucking adult and take care of like the communication because that's so important. I'm so tired of parents hiding behind schools.
Yeah, and if we're talking, I mean, if we're addressing that, we also need to make sure that we are addressing like the other elephant in the room, and that's talking about consent. 100% parents have to
absolutely.
be the one to talk about consent with their kids, especially with men, and I mean with women too. But like this level of like where consent is, what consent is, and when stopping has to happen, when what no means. And that's another thing that I think needs to rely more on the parents than on the community around. The community does need to talk about that, but if it doesn't start in the home, if the parents don't address that level of consent, it just also streams out a lot of other issues. Like all things sex have to be talked about at the root, and people need to be mature enough to have that conversation. Now, Rebecca, did you have that conversation with your son?
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
Because I know your son's like in his 20s. You know, he's
22.
older.
Single mom. You know, his dad's idea of a sex talk was, when Jared was small, he was just like, "Dad, where do babies come from?" And the response was, "From a canal."
They just come floating down like Moses.
That was it. And I was just like, dude, like, you're gonna have to. There's gonna be more
a canal.
questions. He's like, well, technically.
Is
and
that
I
what
was
he
just
called
like,
it during sex? Come here, baby. I want some of that canal.
give me that canal
Give me some of
sugar.
that canal.
It's one of those terms, you know.
Open
Yeah.
the gates. Fuck's sake.
But,
The
yeah,
canal.
so I ended up, having the talk.
Wait, I mean, he seems very well put together. You know, he seems like he,
Yeah, well,
you know,
I've been honest with him since day one because I already knew it was, you and me against the world, kiddo. But I also needed to know that when the shit went down, when he had questions, that he knew he could come to me with anything, and he has. Like there's just been he tattles on himself all the time, and he's 22 years old.
he does that at work too. It's okay.
But he was going.
I love Jared. He's one of the coolest guys I know.
But he was going through a questionable stage, and the fact that him and I talked so honestly and openly, knowing that he could just come to me and say, "Mom, I've got questions," and I'm like, "All right, dude, let's talk." That even his friends could come talk to me. I was the mom who's like, "Hey, Miss Becky, can we go out and rake the leaves?" And the next thing you know, it's just like these kids have diarrhea of the mouth because they can't go home and ask their parents. They can't go talk to their parents about stuff. So they're all at my house. And yeah.
Safe haven.
Yeah, but it's just being able to openly communicate and say, "Okay, well, here, this is your question. All right, let's talk about this. We're not going to call the vagina a canal." Or just
I'm gonna
know.
start.
I think it's kinda
I'm gonna start
sexy.
using that all
I mean,
day.
you can
I've
like,
already
"Hey, baby."
updated my Tinder
explore the
profile.
canal.
Yeah, nice canal. That's a
Take my
smooth ride.
canoe in your canal, girl.
I don't think I can't.
You think that would work?
Next pickup line.
You know what? I
Hey.
totally want to be your wingman.
Hey,
when
that
you try
won't work
that
on
shit.
Grindr.
It's fair. Okay, let me ask you this. I want to know this.
He's pointing at you. So
Maybe from both of you. I don't know. You haven't done the HRT yet, so I don't know if it happens as much for you. But the pickup lines, between being a man getting pickup lines and being a female getting pickup lines, which was worse?
Men. Always.
Yeah.
Because men's version of a pickup line is a dick pic.
That's true. That is true.
Put it on the table for you.
But no, was it worse when you were a female, or was it worse now that you're a male?
So it's definitely different. I mean, honestly, it's actually looking back on it, it is slightly different, but more or less like the same general tendency. Like when I would go to the bar, as if like either way, I'd go to the bar and people would, obviously try and buy me drinks and like all this different stuff, But as a woman, you're objectified because of your, body, your tits, your ass, which I didn't really have one, but
I was gonna ask about that.
about my ass.
Well, it's like, yes, no, because a lot of women have big butts. I mean, I've got some derriere going on there, so I was just wondering with your.
Hey, you stop looking over there.
What? You worry what happens on your side of the table.
So if you didn't have an ass to begin with, then you suffer from the same thing that all men suffer from: no ass at all.
Oh, just because you have one.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Wow.
You can't all be
She
jealous.
got one over there. She got
No,
an
but it
ass.
was actually a serious question. Like, if you had an ass when you were a woman, did you retain it? Because you said the fat moved around,
Right, so-
and
Really, what you retain, is the only bone structure. The fat redistributes, in some places, so it'll go down, towards your thighs or really in around your belly, instead of the, love handles, you get the beer gut
gotcha.
going on.
Amen.
Right?
I've worked a long time for that.
You're so proud.
Well, listen, guys, I know we have so much more we could cover.
This is ridiculous. Why do these hours go by so damn quick when
I
they're
don't
in
know.
here?
It's been an hour already.
It's been an
It feels
hour.
like it's been like 30 minutes. That is
Right,
crazy.
and last time we carried on another almost hour conversation
Off air, yeah.
off air.
Yeah.
So there's just so much more we could talk about, but unfortunately, our time is up.
There will be more that we can talk about. Obviously, I
Yeah.
think I speak for Rebecca when I say I want you guys in here way more so than not. I had something and I just lost it. And it was going to be fucking brilliant.
Really?
I've been thinking about it for like the
Sucks to
past
be
10
you.
minutes.
Why didn't you write it down?
I don't know.
That's what I do. I write notes.
Oh, it was so brilliant, too.
Dumbass.
Oh, okay. I know what it was. So we did have this conversation. We had this conversation off the air last week, and I think this is so important. And this is what you're going to get a lot of with this show, because I know it's still in its infancy. And so expect a little bit more of this. And our job here is to educate. That's our main goal. How can you be a better person in any aspect in life? And this is one that's so important, because we're living at a time right now where everything, if you don't understand it or you're not part of it, it's such a segregated culture right now,
yeah.
and it's complete bullshit. And all you have to do is simply sit down, break down walls, be uncomfortable for a minute, and figure it the fuck out. It's that simple.
Yeah.
So thank you both, because Hayden, you came in here last week, even though you weren't on the show, you were a ball of fire, and you had no problem answering the questions.
Yeah, which is awesome.
And being completely transparent. And, there were jokes, and there have been jokes, and that's perfectly fine, because...
Well, I'm practicing for my future being a transparent.
Oh, hey. But no, it's absolutely, it's so phenomenal that you guys are willing to be as open as you are and answer the questions. And hopefully we have enlightened you guys, because that's the whole point.
That's kind of the point.
Is to sit down and, not necessarily, this is going to come out wrong, but put ourselves in the uncomfortable situations to help better explain things to you. And if that's what we have to do behind these mics, then goddamn it, we're going to do it.
We're going to do it.
Growth,
All right.
Growth never comes in comfortability.
Right.
You're never comfortable when you're growing.
Yes.
Very true.
Awesome. So let's
until
all
next time.
let's all be uncomfortable together.
I sit by you. I'm always uncomfortable.
That's because I'm so hot.
I think it's because Hayden's so hot.
Hayden.
Hayden, AJ, thank you very God damn it, Ethan.
Bring that picture right
Son of a
back up.
bitch. Thank you so much for coming in. That's Rebecca.
That's Sting.
We'll see you guys next time on Logically Emotional.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
guys. Bye.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget, you can find the latest shows online and on demand wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And you can find Logically Emotional on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. You've been listening to Logically Emotional. Copyright 2020, Terminal 57 Inc. All rights reserved.